This chapter begins in the aftermath of the previous fight, with flames surrounding everyone. The undead lady who looked like Camus started the fire with her magic, her hand pointed towards Vikir, who had managed to safely protect Dolores from the sudden bombardment of fire magic from before. Even with the intense heat coming from the fire magic all around them, it doesn't beat the heat coming from Dolores, who stares at Vikir, her face flushing bright red as she sees that the night bloodhound had protected her again. Snapping out of her delusional love, Dolores looks ahead, telling the night bloodhound that she could sense the attacks coming to them were filled with malicious intent. But she also noticed that the attacks weren't just targeting him, it seems to be aimed at her as well. Knowing that, she asks the night bloodhound if the lady in front of them was an undead too, like the other two bodyguards. Hoping that this wasn't true, Vikir simply replies to her question that there might be a chance the red-haired lady was an undead. Hoping to confirm the fact, Vikir asks her about when the Camus look-alike had joined Quilty. Dolores promptly replied that she had joined him quite recently. Taking the moment to absorb everything that was happening to them, Dolores, in her prayer stance, tells the night bloodhound that she too serves God. And if her opponent happens to be an undead, then she couldn't just stand there and do nothing. So she was willing to support Vikir in this fight against her. A holy support has been added to the party, but our boy, as an alpha wolf, turns down her idea, telling her to stand down as he moves towards the undead lady as he had something he needed to check. Hoping to help him with just a bit aid, Dolores offers to cast healing magic on Vikir, but he declines the offer. But before Dolores could fight back against his decision, the undead lady started to cast another set of fire magic as sparks appears in the palm of her hand. Soon enough, multiple lances appeared in the air before her, all aimed towards Vikir, who was walking straight at her without any sort of protection from Dolores. As the fire lances were launched at him like torpedoes, he easily cut all of them apart before they could do any sort of damage towards him. The pieces that were cut flew past him and ended up exploding in the air, but all of this didn't bother Vikir, as he was in deep thought. Even though there was a fire-casting maniac trying to kill him, all Vikir could see was a lady with long and straight red hair, casting magic that at least looks like 6th class level, who uses both steel and fire in her attacks. As he returns Beelzebub to his wrist, Vikir knew that the people who can control that level of magic at such a young age was rare in this continent, even in the Morg family, a prestigious magic family. Speaking of steel and fire, the undead lady summons even more of the steel lances from before, aiming and firing towards Vikir, who was now walking towards her without Beelzebub in his hand. This time, he didn't even cut down the steel lances and simply allowed them to hit him, covering Vikir in a large fiery explosion. Out of the flames came Vikir, completely unharmed by the attacks from her, even managing to catch one of the steel lances in his hands. He continues to make his way towards her slowly, not even bothering to dodge the steel lance attacks as some of them managed to cut his shoulders. One of the steel lances even manages to blow pieces away from his left side, but he still continues to move forward, unfazed by everything that was happening to him, unafraid of the steel and fire attacks. Even Dolores, who was watching from the back, noticed that the night bloodhound was purposely taking on the attacks from the undead, making her question why he was doing so. And if it was because he knew who the undead was. What was more important to her was what kind of relationship did the night bloodhound have with the undead they were facing. Even in the face of death, Vikir continued to walk towards her, not even defending himself anymore. The nearer he got to her, the more he started to think about the time before he regressed. A flashback starts in his head. Vikir knew about the good relationship Camus had with her uncle, Adolphe Morg. Which meant that she wouldn't have left the registry and gone into isolation training in the Darkness Hall. But as he started to recall all the moments they had spent together in this life during their childhood, Vikir started to regret the fact that he had approached her in this life. Thinking back about their conversations, regretting the fact that he had started a relationship with her, and eventually even used her for his own plans. Camus Morg, her face suddenly cleared to him. As he stood in the flames that were trying to kill him, Vikir started to think about the decisions he had made after regressing, some of which may have caused the bright future of the hero known as Camus Morg to disappear. As he finally stood face to face with the Camus undead look-alike, Vikir wondered what the hell had he done to cause this situation. Sensing a chance to attack while Vikir appeared distracted, the undead started to cast another flame spell in her hand, but our boy managed to grab her wrist before she could go any further. As he pulls her arm down to prevent her attack from reaching him, Vikir immediately grabs onto her face with his other hand. In a swift motion, he removes the mask that all the undead were wearing in order to see her true face and to confirm what he was afraid of. Dolores, her mouth left open, was stunned to see what was going on as the mask was ripped from the undead's face, even Vikir, underneath the pandemic mask, had a bizarre reaction to what he had seen. Unwillingly to stop even after having its mask removed, the undead started to cast the flame spell once again in her hand, aimed right towards Vikir, who was about to take it at point-blank range. Without hesitation this time, he pulls out Beelzebub and slices the head off its body, stopping the undead from unleashing its fire spells anymore. As the flames that were surrounding them died down, all that was heard in the area was the sound of the undead's head bouncing on the ground after Vikir had severed it from its body. The undead, now completely dead, laid on the ground, without any signs of life. Seeing that the job was done, Vikir finally kneels down in pain, slowly recovering from the attacks he had taken without defending himself. Dolores could see the horrible state he was in and rushed over to his side. With the amount of blood and wounds covering his body, she could obviously see how injured the Nightblood Hound was, and casted her holy healing magic on him immediately. As the two of them watched over the undead's body, Dolores took the chance to ask him if he knew who she was. Vikir, underneath the mask, took a moment, thinking about what he was going to say before revealing to Dolores that he didn't know who this undead was. Phew, thank the goddess. Sensing that most of his injuries were healed, Vikir slowly stood up, telling Dolores that she had done enough and that his current state was fine enough. But as he stood up, Dolores tried to argue back that he hasn't been healed fully. Feeling that she shouldn't push it, she questions the Nightblood Hound on the reason why he was fighting to the point he had become so injured, and whether he was willing to tell her the truth. Once again, Vikir paused for a moment, before telling Dolores that he was demon hunting, leaving her in a state of shock as he reveals to her that this was his personal vendetta. Moving on from that, he walks over and picks up the mask the undead was wearing. Looking at it closely in his hand, Vikir had wondered what was exuding so much strong demonic energy. It turns out it was the masks that the Quilty guards were wearing. Seeing that he had collected all four of them, Vikir was going to take care of them now. "Hey, give me the relic," said unknown voice, causing both Dolores and Vikir to immediately turn to see where it came from. A nasty-looking mouth had appeared in the stomach of the undead Vikir had just slain. The mouth talked about Ephibo, Hebe, Pedo and Geronto, the names of the four bodyguards, and how it had borrowed them from a certain woman, who was now going to be freaking mad about what had happened to them. Ignoring the words coming from out of it, Dolores was still in shock over how a huge ugly mouth had appeared on the undead's corpse. While she was still in shock, the mouth continued to speak, questioning Vikir about whether he was the guy who had been attacking the branches that were in his jurisdiction lately. Hearing the question, Vikir tells the elite corpse that he shouldn't be asking questions that he already knew the answers to. Taking it a step further, Vikir reveals to the elite corpse that he knew its true identity, which was Quilty. Hearing him say that, Dolores could finally make sense of who the voice belonged to and recognizes it as Quilty's. Seeing that he had finally been exposed, Quilty laughed over the fact that he had been caught by the Saintess. Instead of being afraid, Quilty smiles over this, saying that knowing about what he truly was, is much better. For the great cause, he needed to give up on his identity as Quilty. However, the Saintess had now found out. Since it would make others wary of him, Quilty avoided laying his hands on her, the Saintess. But now, he has a reason to do so since they knew what he was. Dolores, after discovering that Quilty was a demon, started to tremble. Seeing her in that state, Quilty was amused, hoping that her expression was filled with despair and fear when he took her face next. But then, a yellow aura started to appear around the Saintess as she held her hands together for a prayer and started to chant. Her face, filled with hope and courage, illuminated the area with a bright yellow light as she chanted the words, "The light of my life, the fire of my existence, and my sin and my soul, I will make those who are wicked feel the weight of their karma twofold." Before shouting the words holy light as a massive pillar of bright light showered down upon Quilty, causing him to scream out in pain. He could feel the divine power coming from Dolores' prayer slowly burning him away as he continued to let out cries of pain and suffering. As the pillar of holy light disappeared, so did Quilty and the undead corpse he had taken control over. What remained was simply a pile of burnt and black ashes. "Reflect in the afterlife, you demon," shouted Dolores after finishing her prayer and holy magic attack on Quilty. But as she said those words, an image of someone licking his lips appeared. He couldn't believe that Dolores was saying those words with the kind of expression she had on her face, right before a powerful green attack punctured through Vikir like nothing, so fast that even our boy couldn't react and defend himself in time. The unknown figure starts to walk towards them as Dolores kneels down to help the Night Bloodhound from the surprise attack. The man who licked his lips turns out to be Quilty, who finally reveals himself to them. He appears in a mocking tone, telling the saintess that she shouldn't have interrupted him with that prayer since it was bad manners. Using herself as a human shield, Dolores tries to block Quilty from reaching the Nightblood Hound, who was in the midst of recovering from his surprise attack. She even takes the chance to scold Quilty for daring to wear the cloak of a saint while committing such wicked things. But he simply tells her that he did what any demon would do before questioning her on whether she wanted to fight him. Her voice trembles and stutters as she tells the demon that yes, I am going to fight you. But seeing the state they were in, Quilty mocks them, asking her if she thinks an inexperienced and immature saintess, along with a swordsman who was on the brink of death, would be able to go up against him. An elite corpse. As he touches her face, he could see that Dolores was forcing herself to act like she was strong. After all, he could see fear dripping out of her expression this round. With a sickening look on his face, Quilty screams at the saintess that she couldn't fool anyone with the face she had on right now, a face filled with fear and horror. Quilty's mouth started to drip with saliva, his eyes completely focused on the fact that he was about to have the face that he always wanted for so long. It was literally in his hands. But in the next moment, a familiar sight appeared, with Beelzebub entering his skull from the bottom of his chin, leaving him confused. Vikir's voice could be heard as Dolores turns to look at the Night Bloodhound. Vikir reveals to Quilty that he had been following his traces, which made him realize a few things about the demon. First was that he was a coward who would easily sacrifice his subordinates. Second, he was a coward that didn't fight for himself. Third, Vikir figured out that Quilty wouldn't reveal himself as long as he remained uninjured. So all this time, our boy had pretended to be hurt by the surprise attack, revealing to everyone that he had already healed from the attack a long time ago, and that healing an injury like that was nothing. This was all part of his act. Even with a blade through its thick skull and its eyes rolling backwards filled with blood, Vikir questions Quilty about how his acting was. In the next moment, Quilty's eyes changed back to its bright green demonic side, staring right at Vikir even with a blade in its head. Laughing over their situation, he tells Vikir to call him Dantalian instead, throwing away the name Quilty before calling Vikir a damned method-acting brat.